He never hears no, not from his associates, not from his family, and certainly not from the women he's drawn into his orbit. That was the blistering statement that kicked off a stunning round of closing arguments in the high-stakes trial of Sean Diddy Combs. Today we unravel the tumultuous proceedings and explore why this pivotal moment might shake the foundations of the entertainment world. What really happened behind closed doors, and how does the glitter of celebrity conceal the shadowy side of ambition and power? In this deep dive, we will dissect the allegations of sex trafficking, racketeering, and astonishing acts of intimidation that prosecutors insist define this case, as well as the defense's fiery rebuttals. We will also shine a spotlight on the moral dilemmas lurking in an industry fueled by fame, fortune, and a near unlimited sense of invincibility. From the very beginning, the courtroom has been electric with tension. Seated at the defense table, wearing a cream-colored sweater, Sean Combs leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed intently on the prosecution. Just a few rows behind him sat his twin daughters and his 85-year-old mother, silent reminders of the towering personal stakes on both sides of this case. Outside, curious fans and reporters battled for space, phones at the ready, hungry for every scrap of information that might signal the star's fate. This trial has drawn countless spectators, everyone grappling with the knowledge that one of music's most prolific entrepreneurs could face a future behind bars. The prosecution's final statement, delivered by Assistant United States Attorney Christy Slavic, lasted 4 hours and read like a spine-tingling drama. According to her, Sean Combs is not merely a hip-hop mogul. He is the leader of a criminal enterprise, orchestrating a kingdom built on loyalty, drugs, violence, and terrifying acts of intimidation. She painted a grim picture of a man who would bend others to his will through whatever means necessary, including manipulation and coercion, all to gratify a hunger for power and control. "He doesn't take no for an answer," Slavic declared, unveiling detail after detail that felt like hammer blows to the defense. Whether it was organizing secret freak-offs or filming intimate acts without consent, the government's portrayal of Combs escalated the tension to a boiling point. At the core of the prosecution's narrative are two ex-girlfriends. One of them, the singer who has publicly identified herself as Casandra Ventura, and the other referred to simply as Jane. Both women, the prosecution asserts, were subjected to repeated physical and emotional abuse. Their stories share disturbing patterns: unexpected violence, forced participation in explicit scenarios, and the ever-present threat of losing their livelihood or even physical safety if they did not comply with Combs's demands. The phrase sex trafficking sounds almost too grim to be tied to a music producer who once graced countless magazine covers, but the prosecution is unwavering in its conviction that Combs's actions fit the statutory definition. They argue that he used his employees to facilitate his desires, whether by supplying drugs to dull the senses of his alleged victims, or by refusing to pay rent if they tried to distance themselves from him. Slavic emphasized the notion of racketeering as the spine that held this so-called criminal enterprise together. Jurors were reminded that they only need to find 2 specific crimes committed under this enterprise to return a guilty verdict. Yet Slavic insisted that there were hundreds. According to the prosecution, Combs would allegedly resort to drug trafficking, enlisting subordinates to obtain cocaine and other substances. Another shocking claim involved the arson of musician Kid Cudi's car, an apparent act of retaliation or intimidation that seemed to be part of what Slavic portrayed as Combs's broad network of illicit operations. The entire structure, from bodyguards to personal assistants, was painted as complicit in some capacity. For some in the courtroom, the most staggering piece of evidence was the video from the hotel hallway, recorded in the middle of 2016. In that clip, Combs, shoulders tensed, is shown beating Ventura and attempting to drag her back to a room after she reportedly tried to leave one of these freak-off scenarios. The prosecution played this footage repeatedly, drilling its visceral force into the minds of the 12 New Yorkers tasked with deciding the star's outcome. Each time the images reappeared, a hush fell over the courtroom, punctuated only by the shuffling of feet or the sound of pens scratching across notepads. "This is what happens when any woman dares to say no to the man who believes he is untouchable," Slavic intoned, pointing at the screen. Combs kept his head bowed, as if trying to distance himself from the images on display, while his daughters in the gallery looked visibly distressed. Outside, social media lit up with reactions. Some viewers expressed heartbreak and outrage, while others questioned whether the footage offered complete context. Nevertheless, in the space of that courtroom, the emotional resonance felt inescapable. Now, here is where we come to the crucial heart of the matter, the line between a dysfunctional relationship and criminal sex trafficking. Combs's defense has attempted to portray many of these relationships as consensual, albeit unconventional. They argued that Combs, historically known for his lavish parties and public persona, only ever took part in what might be deemed an adult swingers scene, and that accusations of trafficking were attempts to paint consensual activities in a nefarious light. But Slavik was relentless in explaining that the crux of sex trafficking lies in using force, fraud, or coercion to manipulate victims into unwanted acts. She pointed to Ventura's battered face in the hotel footage as proof that she had no real say. She highlighted damning text messages from Jane, who pleaded with Combs to spare her from further humiliations and threatened, in multiple messages, to leave. According to Slavik, Jane dreaded living on the street more than enduring Combs's demands. Against the dramatic testimony and evidence, one might assume Combs's defense would mount a massive counterattack. Early in the trial, the defense hammered on the idea that these stories were riddled with inconsistencies. Why did Ventura remain in Combs's orbit for so long? Why did Jane continue to accept financial support? Might their allegations be motivated by the potential for monetary gain or a thirst for revenge? Yet, in a stunning move, Combs's legal team rested its case after merely 20 minutes, presenting only a scattering of text messages from Jane. No additional witnesses were called to the stand. The defense seemed to be betting that the prosecution's burden of proof would falter under its own weight, or perhaps they intended one final cinematic moment during their closing arguments, expected to take place the next day. So, the question remains, how will the jurors weigh the scales of justice? One cannot overlook the broader social context, in which high-profile figures have increasingly been held accountable for alleged wrongdoing once swept discreetly under the rug. For many observers, this trial encapsulates a cultural shift, an era where power dynamics, once overlooked, are now scrutinized under the brightest lights. While no verdict has been reached yet, the echoes of past celebrity scandals, from major film producers to sports icons, reverberate through the chamber. Could this be the time another entertainment titan collapses? Or will Combs emerge from this unscathed, his vast resources and reputation shielding him from the allegations swirling around him? We are heading now into the final phase, jury deliberation. That is the moment when all the testimonies, videos, text messages, and rhetorical flourishes coalesce into a single question: guilty or not guilty? If found guilty of the more severe charges, sex trafficking and racketeering, Combs faces the stark possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison. The potential ramifications do not end there. An avalanche of civil lawsuits could follow, from alleged victims who claim irreparable damage from what they describe as years of systemic exploitation, as well as from business partners or sponsors who want to distance themselves from any association with the scandal. Before we continue, let me pause to ask something of you, dear listeners. If you find this glimpse into a world of immense celebrity, dark secrets, and legal showdowns astonishing, take a moment to show your support. Whether it is a simple gesture of liking or sharing, it helps us bring more in-depth stories and keep the flame of investigative reporting alive. Returning to the trial, it is vital to note how intricately personal the events truly are. Combs's family presence in the courtroom was a silent testament to how the radius of pain extends far beyond the actual parties involved. On the prosecution side, families of the accusers were also seen in the gallery at various times, their faces etched with anxiety as they relived recollections of alleged horrors inflicted upon loved ones. The tension sometimes escalated into stares across the aisle. Court officers discreetly positioned themselves to preempt any potential altercation. Outside the courthouse, the scene was equally tense. Protesters and fans from all walks of life gathered, some proclaiming Combs's innocence and citing an unjust media climate, others brandishing handmade signs in support of the accusers. On social media, the debate raged furiously. Was Combs a victim of tabloid sensationalism, or was this trial the long-overdue reckoning for a man who believed he could operate above all moral and legal constraints? Has the entertainment industry enabled too many powerful figures to skirt accountability? And importantly, what does it say about our culture that such allegations, coerced freak-offs, drug-fueled nights, and the filming of private acts should raise so many eyebrows, yet also surprise so few? Yet, throughout these revelations, the prosecution's approach has shown a calculated strategy. They aim to prove not just that Combs committed crimes, but that there was a deliberate structure, a criminal enterprise, designed to maintain his iron grip. This framing implies that he operated akin to a kingpin, orchestrating an elaborate web where everyone from his bodyguards to personal aides played specific roles. For jurors, comprehending the scope of such an organized, hierarchical system can be an overwhelming challenge, especially when defense counsel reminds them that powerful men often gather large entourages that carry out tasks without the employer's explicit knowledge or approval. Defense attorneys, for their part, have fiercely cautioned jurors against conflating Combs's flamboyant lifestyle with criminal behavior. They insisted that he is a hard-working entrepreneur, the visionary behind some of music's greatest hits, and a mentor for countless emerging talents. They contended that the allegations hinge on the bitterness of ex-lovers, the thirst for sensational headlines, and the public's growing appetite for tales of fallen idols. According to the defense, every text message or damning piece of footage could be reinterpreted through a lens of personal conflict, self-serving motives, or a complicated sexual dynamic that, while possibly troubling, does not necessarily break the law. Although the prosecution's main arguments have now been laid bare for jurors, the defense's final rebuttal is likely to be every bit as gripping. Already, the public is bracing for the possibility of a scorched earth counterattack, blaming the government for overreach and painting the alleged victims as manipulative liars. The tension is so thick you can almost taste it in the air. The multi-million-dollar question is, will these tactics sway the jury, or has the powerful imagery and testimony already sealed Combs's fate? Regardless of the outcome, the social and cultural ramifications are profound. Consider the reputational freefall that could ensue if a guilty verdict is returned. Music production deals might evaporate, brand endorsements could vanish instantly, and entire segments of Combs' once glowing legacy may be reassessed. On the flip side, an acquittal would give a renewed platform to those who believe celebrity defendants are too often made scapegoats by a system hungry for high-profile convictions. The swirling controversy ensures that, no matter how the jury votes, the public conversation will not subside easily. Podcasts, documentaries, and panel discussions will dissect this trial for years to come, seeking to understand what it reveals about the intersection of stardom and power. That is where the Diddy on trial phenomenon emerges, championed by news platforms eager to supply updates in real time. The BBC's coverage sparked immense interest, with daily segments pinned to social media. The question on everyone's lips, what's next? Some observers anticipate that if found guilty, Combs might strike a last-minute plea deal, though legal experts say it is increasingly unlikely at this advanced stage. Others speculate that a partial guilty verdict on less serious charges could create a scenario in which Combs faces jail time, but not life. The swirling possibilities only intensify the atmosphere. Yet the biggest bombshell might still be lurking behind the scenes. Will additional accusers step forward? Will new evidence appear? Cases of this magnitude often expand as attention grows, emboldening those who once feared to speak out. Perhaps the most shocking revelation is waiting in the wings, ready to pounce just as the jury weighs its verdict. Could it be a detailed record or set of documents casting events in a different light? Or might there be a decisive piece of evidence that breaks the tension once and for all? Whatever happens next, consider the delicate balancing act that judges, attorneys, and the media must perform when so many complicated interests converge. For every outraged voice condemning celebrity impunity, another voice warns of a dangerous trial by public opinion. Courts have the monumental responsibility to weigh hard facts, separate truths from possible fabrications, and ensure that justice is meted out solely on the basis of law and evidence, not headlines and hashtags. It is an undertaking that requires vigilance, especially in our era of instantaneous dissemination of information. As we near the end of today's deep dive, it is worth acknowledging that the specter of domestic violence, manipulation, and sexual exploitation is not unique to Combs' story, though it may feel magnified under the glare of his superstar status. These issues strike a chord with many individuals who have felt powerless at some point in their lives. Such real-world implications extend beyond this one trial, resonating with anyone who has witnessed or endured experiences of coercion or abuse under the facade of glamour or power. That said, each case has its own particularities, and the final verdict here will hinge on the intricacies explored in court. At this crucial juncture, allow me to interject a second and final friendly appeal. If today's investigation into the complexities of stardom, responsibility, and legal accountability has resonated with you, do not forget to subscribe or follow. By doing so, you will stay informed of future updates and analyses that aim to shed light on dark corners and demystify the complexities of high-profile legal battles. We have journeyed through allegations of intimidation, coercion, secret freak-offs, hotel altercations, and personal tragedies that pivot around the question of consent and dignity. We have explored the prosecution's sharp assertions of a criminal enterprise, the defense's portrayal of a misunderstood artist, and the emotional heartbeat of a courtroom that includes both alleged victims seeking justice and a family anxiously defending a beloved patriarch. Now, everything converges on the precipice of a verdict that could reshape the legacy of Sean Diddy Combs and potentially alter the trajectory of the entertainment industry's accountability. Where does that leave us? It leaves us gripping our seats, waiting for that final decision from 12 New Yorkers tasked with disentangling these fateful narratives. Their job is monumental. Interpret the evidence, parse complicated testimonies, and decide if a world-famous celebrity is indeed the calculating king of a criminal enterprise, or merely a flawed man caught in a net of accusations. Their deliberations will determine not only whether Combs remains a free man, but whether the conversation about power, fame, and personal boundaries evolves. For now, we must wait and see. Will the star once hailed for his entrepreneurial brilliance and captivating performances find himself condemned to a lifetime behind bars? Or will he walk away from the courthouse declaring victory over both his alleged victims and a legal system that some claim is eager to topple another giant? This is more than just the story of one man's rise or fall. It is a reflection on the energies that drive our most glamorous industries, the frailties of our justice system, and the fragile moral lines we draw when power meets desire. In the days or possibly weeks ahead, the jury will gather and painstakingly review all the photographs, text messages, transcripts, and that emotionally charged hotel hallway video. They will hear once more from the judge, who will remind them of the burden of proof, the precise legal definitions of sex trafficking and racketeering, and their solemn responsibilities. Then the door will close, leaving them alone with thousands of pages of evidence, a tangle of contradictory testimonies, and the magnitude of deciding a case that will echo through the corridors of music studios, law offices, and social media feeds worldwide. The final moment will be as dramatic as any movie premiere, except here, the stakes are infinitely higher. A man's life and legacy, the dignity of potential victims, and the precedent set for how the legal system contends with towering celebrities. Ultimately, no matter which side gains the upper hand, the conversation ignited by these events is sure to reverberate in the public consciousness. It forces us to examine the boundaries we permit to be crossed in the name of entertainment or success, and whether we, as a society, are willing to confront the powerful and demand accountability when those boundaries are seared away. That is the saga unfolding in real time, a narrative as riveting as it is unsettling. The outcome is uncertain, but one thing is clear. This is a threshold moment that could alter the cultural landscape. From the moment Combs was indicted, through weeks of devastating testimony, to these final statements that promise either redemption or demise, we have witnessed a dramatic confrontation between power and principle. The real question is, how far does that power extend? And does it ultimately eclipse the truth?